Have you ever wondered why not so many families, not so many businesses incorporate fixed assets, real estate? Well, the reason is because they created an anti-abuse law, which is called Società di Comodo. Basically, in every tax return, whether it's a company, an individual, or a partnership, so if you run a business, there is a Società di Comodo information to fill. And that means as a dormant company, or a holding company, if you just put those assets on hold, what do they do? Basically, they take all your fixed assets with different percentages, so real estate, material and immaterial assets, and put a percentage on the book value, on the net book value of those assets. And they say, well, we assume that if you have a real estate, the minimum amount of revenue they should generate is 3%. So if you have 200,000 euros of real estate, your tax return should show at least 6,000 euros of revenue. And what happens if you do not? Well, what happens if you do zero? What happens if your real estate has been vacant for the whole year? No problem. The minimum revenue is 6,000 euros. And on those 6,000, you have to charge VAT and charge income tax or corporate tax, depending on the type of tax you pay as a business. And this is extremely unfair. And this has nothing to do with the ISA. This is a type of control that has been there since 2006. And there are no mitigating factors and no condition. There are no different coefficients if you live in Milan or in Rome. It's just 3% for real estate, and that's it. So imagine that you do works to perform to enhance the value of the property, or you bought the property in a time period in which the values are high and now they are lower. Well, it doesn't matter. It's the net book value. So it's the cost plus enhancement minus depreciation. And you are required to do that. You are required to pay tax on that. You cannot say, well, let's disregard this. It's just impossible. All you have to do is to focus on that. Is to say, hey, this is the amount of money it's worth. That's the percentage. I hope I make more revenues than that. You cannot say, hey, we've got a very bad situation this year. The house was closed for 6 months due to renovation. It doesn't matter. That's the value multiplied by 3%. And another thing that is very important to consider is the systemic loss. So whenever your company does a systemic loss of 3 out of the last 5 tax years, well, they deem a minimum income. And the minimum income is based on the value, net book value of the fixed assets in your balance sheet. So if you have fixed assets, they say, hey, you've been running at loss for quite too long. So this year, that's the amount of revenue you make, therefore of income, and you cannot carry forward losses. So it is very important to structure your business according to that. The activity must be trading. You cannot have a company to just hold assets and that's it. You must be trading. Or a good way, if you want to do a holding company, consider to use the Società Semplice. In that case, you do not have to do with those crazy laws that deem a minimum income based on the amount of assets you have.